Hello, I'm Joseph Giunta, the music director and conductor of the Des Moines Symphony. Welcome to the DMSO Listing Room. In this segment, I set out to talk about how non-classical music influenced my life as a musician and a conductor. But I found that the influences on my musical education were so cross-pollinated, I kept darting back and forth from classical to non-classical subjects. And to be truthful, I have always disliked the distinction. To me, music is either good or bad, or better yet, great, no matter what the title it falls under. So you'll hear a bit of both as I recount some of the shaping musical moments of my life. I can remember going to my first orchestral concert when I was 10 years old. William Smith, keyboardist and associate conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and later became my first conducting teacher, led this great orchestra in a daytime concert just for students. My friends and I had been thoroughly prepared by our music teacher for what was going to be performed. The Dvorak Carnival Overture, the minuet movement of Mozart's 39th Symphony, the second movement of Shostakovich's 5th Symphony, and the finale of Respighi's glorious and triumphant Pines of Rome concluded the concert. What a concert it was! At dinner that evening, I told my always supportive and loving parents I wanted to be a conductor. And they reacted as most parents would. Good. Now eat your peas. A few months later, I attended a Philadelphia Orchestra concert conducted by the renowned Eugene Ormandy. Beethoven's 6th Symphony was played, appropriately titled the Pastoral. Now this piece is basically a musical travelogue that depicts a simple rustic life full of dances, a walk along a brook, birds singing, a violent thunderstorm, and a prayer of thanksgiving. Hearing this piece live made an indelible impression on me. It created a mood that words just cannot describe. It expressed the inexpressible. I am lucky to discover and rediscover this magic over and over again in my musical life today. When I look back at these two experiences, one would think my attraction to classical music was fated. With no classical records being played in our home, no trained musicians for parents or family members, and no personal education in music other than the weekly music teacher coming to my 5th grade classroom. Why did these experiences make such an impression on me and eventually be the seed for a career in music? I believe it all started way before this. You see, my parents loved to dance, and they were great at it. I can remember at family celebrations how fluid they were on the dance floor, and they loved to listen to big band music as well as Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, and Ella Fitzgerald. And since my dad was born and raised in South Philadelphia, the home of American Bandstand, hosted by Dick Clark, this was a must-see on our television. Bobby Rydell, Fabian, and Frankie Avalon were all crooners of the day that Clark catapulted to fame. My parents had all their albums, and all three of us knew every tune. One day, a friend of my mother's gave her an album of the great Italian opera singer Enrique Caruso. Thereafter, it was played daily. It was around that time a few of my dad's friends from South Philly came to our house for dinner. My mother was a great Italian cook. And among them were 2 of the Di Pasquale brothers. There were 4 brothers, and they all played in the Philadelphia Orchestra. They took an interest in me, and after dinner, together we listened to that Caruso album. Never had I heard such comments about music. They talked about phrasing, intonation, dynamic range, and Italian diction, all things I had never heard of before. From this point, I was highly motivated to learn everything I could about music, and this passion to learn continues to this day. But while I dug into the study of classical music, I was equally drawn to the popular music of the day. I began to apply what I was learning to all aspects of music, never feeling a need to make a distinction between classical or popular music. To me, it was just music. As the months turned to years, I formed a band and was responsible for writing all the arrangements. Countless wedding parties, bar mitzvahs, anniversaries, and birthday gatherings heard my knockoff arrangements of pieces by groups like Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, The Carpenters, Carole King, Burt Bacharach, Tom Jones, and many, many others. I notated every chord and melody by ear from their recordings. And I wondered, why did Sinatra and Ella speak to me more keenly than other singers? In time, I realized their phrasing was impeccable, and they were great storytellers. Their mastery is a source from which I still draw inspiration in shaping the orchestra's phrasing today. My mother would take me to Broadway shows in New York, my father to hear several concerts with the New York Philharmonic, conducted by Leonard Bernstein, who would later become another influence in my life. And there were many Philadelphia Orchestra concerts. They even bought me tickets to hear Frank, Ella, and the Count Basie Big Band at the Uris Theater in New York City as a high school graduation present. Talk about a memory. Down deep in my heart, I hear it play, I feel it Once I moved to Chicago to attend Northwestern University, I was surrounded by many like-minded students and faculty. They encouraged me to pursue all my musical interests. I arranged music for different groups. I formed small ensembles with my friends to conduct. I became the music director of the student-run Dolphin Show, which produced musical theater, and choral director for the famed WAMU variety show. I conducted a 4-week run of the show Zorba at the State Theater downtown in the Loop, as well as a series of in-school youth concerts with members of the Chicago Symphony performing Stravinsky's difficult chamber piece for 7 players, L'Histoire du Soldat. And I was extremely fortunate to study with Northwestern University Director of Bands John P. Painter. His knowledge of wind ensemble music was amazing. He taught me the idiosyncratic tendencies of wind, brass, and percussion sections that became assets in building a foundation for a career in orchestral conducting. He entrusted me to conduct his ensembles as well, which deepened my understanding and affection for these instruments and the music written for them. All this activity and so much more, while still taking a full load of classes and studying privately with Chicago Symphony Associate Conductor Henry Mazer. These experiences were steeped in terrific musical experiences of all genres, and equally important, the wealth of opportunity taught me the importance of being organized and disciplined. How fortunate I was. Henry Mazer, a complicated man and incredibly talented musician, loved pop and jazz music as much as he loved classical music. He would improvise at the piano, moving from something that sounded like Debussy or Ravel to Brubeck, Bud Powell, or Ellington. He was a protege of the strict and highly respected Fritz Reiner. And soon after my lessons with him began, he taught me an equally important component of this job: humility, much like Reiner had taught him 30 years earlier. One Sunday morning, I was driving the Maestro south on Lakeshore Drive to 220 South Michigan Avenue, Orchestra Hall, home of the famed Chicago Symphony. During the drive, we casually talked about the Cubs and a few other things, and at one point, he asked if I had worked on Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the piece that I was to prepare for the lesson. I responded, "Yes, I know the piece." Upon entering his elegant 6th-floor studio overlooking Grant Park, he snatched my score, ordered me to sit at the piano, and proceeded to pepper me with questions about the piece that I was simply not equipped to answer. This went on for 15 minutes, at which point he threw the score back at me and stormed out, yelling expletives too harsh to repeat. I returned to campus in a blur. I started to think about alternative careers. The sleepless nights and soul-searching continued for weeks, and not once did I hear from Mr. Mazur's scheduler, who routinely called me on Thursday mornings to set up my lesson times. 2 Thursdays passed in crippling silence, and then, on the third one, the phone rang, and she inquired if I was free for a lesson with Mr. Mazur on Sunday. I was thrilled, studied harder than ever, and when driving him to Orchestra Hall that Sunday, he casually asked, "Do you know the Beethoven Fifth Symphony?" And I quickly responded, "No." His wry smile made apparent that I had learned the intended lesson: humility. Ultimately, what he taught me was we can always learn something from great art, and that the constant discovery and rediscovery was the life that a true artist must live. There was nothing more important or noble than serving the music. This lesson has stayed with me all my life and has dramatically shaped me for a life of studying, preparing, and conducting. The enthusiasm and experiences in popular music were also highly influential. Listening attentively to the breathing of great song stylists like Sinatra and Ella taught me so much about how natural and effortless phrasing should be, as well as its relationship to the right tempo. Writing arrangements for bands and popular ensembles was great ear training. And as mentioned, the volume of opportunities helped develop a work ethic that I have carried with me all of my life. Time has proven how important these experiences were because of the growth of orchestras in the last 4 decades in America demanded more than being classically trained. Today, musicians are asked to be more diverse, playing concerts for a wide variety of tastes, including popular, jazz, Broadway, and film music, in addition to the traditional classical repertoire. I am so grateful for the broad education that embraced all good music that helped to prepare me for a life making great music. I treat pops and outdoor concerts, Yankee Doodle Pops, or New Year's Eve with the same seriousness of purpose and studious preparation that I do masterworks. It brings to mind a conversation that George Gershwin had with someone who asked him if his music was popular or serious. He answered wryly, "I don't know, nor do I care how one categorizes it. I just want my music to bring joy into people's lives." I could not say it any better. Until next time, stay well.